Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the final Opposition View episode of this season, the 2019 to 2020 season. Obviously, it's stretched on for a bit longer than we expected, but here we are finally at the end of the year. Obviously, a disappointing end to the season for us. Obviously, no European football. We're not going to finish in the top half, but obviously, it's time to kind of move on from this. Let Ancelotti have the summer and move into next season with players he wants. But obviously, before that, we do have a final game of the season, which is very important for our oppositions. I spoke to Sam from Back of the Net podcast, a Bournemouth fan, and asked him a couple of questions about, obviously they're in a massive relegation fight at the moment, whether he believes they can stay up, who their key danger men are. Obviously we spoke a bit about Ryan Fraser, a player that Everton have been linked with as well. And then kind of what he sees Bournemouth's future as and who he sees potentially joining next season if they do go down, and potentially the future of Eddie Howe. So obviously that call is coming up now. So thank you all very much for your support throughout the year on the Opposition View videos and of course on the channel. Let's hope for a good last game and then hopefully a good start in the next season. So let's just jump straight into the call now. Yeah, so just first off, obviously with one game left to play, Bournemouth find themselves 3 points off safety. How likely do you really think it is now that kind of all the results go your way and you secure Premier League safety? Because obviously Villa play West Ham, which is a massive game concerning relegation. Obviously you've got to get a result against us, you've got to get a win against us, and then obviously hope that the other two drop points at the same time. So obviously you find yourself in a very tricky situation. But kind of, do you think you'll be playing Premier League football again next season?
I think it's going to be unlikely that all the results go our way. I think, the main focus is on ourselves. Aston Villa put in a shift against Arsenal. Arsenal were poor, they didn't register a shot on target. So with Arsenal playing Watford, and they want to finish as high as they can and pick up some momentum ahead of the FA Cup final. So hopefully they'll bring back the players that they rested, and players will be wanting to look as though they want to get a starting berth for the FA Cup final. So they'll be vying for Arteta's attention. The West Ham Villa game worries me somewhat. West Ham picking up that point at Old Trafford, what's there left to play for? Pride, I don't really know, but I can feel Villa getting a point in that. If they don't, then it's up to us. Now, our attacking flair is gone somewhat. So that's the main problem, really. I think all we need to do is just try to put in a shift and win the game, and everything else will take care of itself. It's unlikely, it's not impossible, but it's improbable.
Yeah, I agree. I can definitely see Arsenal beating Watford now. Obviously, a couple of players obviously looking for their place up for grabs in the FA Cup final. I can definitely see Villa nicking a result against West Ham, who obviously have nothing to play for now. They've secured their safety in the Premier League next season, so it might be the typical players on deck chairs moment. They might switch off for a bit, but kind of just staying on relegation for a moment. Where's it all kind of gone wrong for Bournemouth this year? Has it been kind of a mentality thing? Has it been recruitment or quality? What would you put down Bournemouth struggles to?
I almost think you summed it up there. There are a number of factors really. Mentally, yeah, we've not been on it. I think that a number of factors inside the club have contributed to where we're at, not least Jordan Ibe being the AWOL player that he has been, the Ryan Fraser contract situation which dragged on throughout the season, and he and Callum Wilson, if you had them in your fantasy teams in previous seasons, you'd be doing very well. Over the last 2 years he's in the top 5 assist creators in the Premier League. And he's not been on it at all this season, and of course he hasn't been performing, and now he's no longer at the club, and it's that twinned with a horrendous spell of injuries at the start of the season, the fact that we had to phase in so many new players. Eddie Howe season on season has managed to bring in 1 or 2. This season we've had to basically put together 6 or 7 new players and get them to learn the Bournemouth way of playing, and it hasn't worked. And Eddie, I think, has been tactically naive at times as well, and it's just been poor all over really. And the Premier League doesn't really we don't deserve to be in the Premier League with the football we've played. We would be getting away with blue murder if we do stay up, and it would be a miracle if we do. But yeah, just a turgid season, and one to forget. I think unfortunately the team output is lesser than the sum of its parts, because individually quality players, but together this season we've been horrendous. And in previous years, it's been the other way around, where we've basically had teams of misfits that Eddie has moulded together, and we've been incredible. But this season, it wasn't to be.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that you mentioned mentality there, because obviously that resonates well with Everton fans' mentality being questioned a lot with our players recently and kind of throughout the whole season. So it'll be an interesting kind of battle of mentality in this game. Obviously, we've had nothing to play for a couple of weeks now. Obviously, a much improved result against Sheffield United, and obviously it'll be interesting to see if Bournemouth players do do they have the strength, the mental strength to kind of come through a very tricky position that you now find yourselves in, and kind of obviously Eddie Howe is a name that's been linked with Arsenal when they've sacked their manager. Us, in the different times we've sacked our managers. What's kind of the general opinion amongst Bournemouth fans now? Obviously, as this season kind of demonstrated, it might be time for a change. Obviously, he's done very, very well for you for the past few years. Is it potentially now time for a change in the Championship, or what's the kind of general perspective on Eddie Howe?
On the whole, Bournemouth fans still want Eddie to stay. I think the fact that what he's done in previous seasons, getting us up from League Two to the Premier League, earns him a green card for a certain amount of time. But of course, we cannot afford to be overly sentimental. I mean, Watford aren't. But, there is a limit to the depths that we will go before Eddie is released. But when you look at him, I actually wrote this on an article that I was going to put on our website, that I just feel as though he needs a break. Sometimes being so pivotal and integral in the club like he is, it's great because you know everything, about everything that's going on. However, equally, it can be a negative because you're consumed in a bubble that's created by yourself. And even the other coaches are his mates. He looks knackered in interviews. He needs a holiday. I think, can you imagine that David Moyes, when he was going to bed at night, was worrying about the livelihood of the man that puts the shirts out in the club shop? No. I guarantee that Eddie Howe would have been, because the decisions on the pitch are going to affect so many more things other than the football side, people's careers. And Eddie's got that kind of conscience to him, and, being so integral to the club, I think, has actually been a negative for him. And he just looks a broken man at the moment, but hopefully he'll have a shorter break than usual and come back, hopefully as Bournemouth manager, because we still want him, because we know that he's got the experience of getting us back up, and people are going to want to play for him as well. There are going to be players who are looking at Championship clubs thinking, well, Bournemouth, they were Premier League, they play a good brand of football, and hang on, like Eddie Howe's in charge, that alone is a selling point. So I certainly hope he stays for that reason alone.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, there's been numerous links between us and Eddie Howe every time we've sacked a manager, and it'd be interesting to see where he goes next. Obviously, whether he gets sacked now or maybe later on into the Championship season if you do get relegated. Because obviously he's been linked with big clubs, and it'll be interesting to see if he gets sacked now, what kind of comes next in his career. And kind of moving away from Eddie Howe, obviously this isn't just manager talk, we're going to talk about the club in general, not just how Eddie Howe's going to bounce back, but if the probable happens, you do get relegated, do you see Bournemouth bouncing straight back? Kind of what's next for the club? What kind of has to happen next season? Do you think it's likely you come straight back up? Obviously, we've seen clubs go down, not come straight back up. Obviously, recently we've just seen obviously all the drama. West Brom have just come back up after 2 seasons. Swansea and Cardiff have been down for quite a few seasons now. Obviously, they're both in the playoffs. Can you see yourself coming back up now next season?
I don't honestly know. It all depends whether we keep Eddie or not. A number of players will go, and we're resigned to that fact. We've got a lot of talent that I think would probably stay, and they are players that Eddie can mould into the players that he wants. I mean, he's done some great work with them already. Players like Diego Rico, Lewis Cook, maybe David Brooks, Lloyd Kelly, if I've not mentioned him, Jack Stacey. These are great players that will do really well in the Championship. And I think Eddie's strengths are bringing on players that have got little pedigree when it comes to Premier League football and almost moulding them into top flight players. Whereas I think one of his weaknesses is signing players that have Premier League experience or have a reputation, players like Jordan Ibe. Dom Solanke to some extent at first, but he's come good. Sylvain Distin, Jermaine Defoe, even Lee Tomlin. There are many kind of big names that he's signed. Glenn Murray. that were as good as straight out the door because they didn't quite fit into the way that Eddie was thinking. So I think the Championship will be good for us. I think that we'll have a good chance to get the playoffs, or it would be lovely to bounce straight back up. Whether the owner will be wanting to plough in money still, I'm not too sure. I think it's going to be harder than most people think, but it all revolves around keeping Eddie Howe at the club. A lot of players will sign for Eddie, and a lot of them are invested into his philosophy. So that's the sort of main question, really. But I certainly would like to think we're not going to do a Sunderland or a Wigan, put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of players leaving, kind of, there's a big name we've got to talk about. Ryan Fraser obviously refused to sign a short-term contract. He's been linked with Everton. Obviously, Everton fans kind of a bit split on him, whether we need him or not, whether kind of we want that attitude. But what's the kind of general perspective on him now? And could he see it being a good signing for Everton going forwards?
Yeah, Ryan Fraser, I think is an excellent player. He left on with a bit of animosity with the Bournemouth fans, I've got to say. His attitude wasn't the greatest this season. I think he thought he was bigger than the club itself, but where we're at the moment, maybe he was right in making the decision he did. I do wish him well for the future, but he's that great player, low centre of gravity, very quick, very nippy, naive. So he's sometimes tactically naive, but he just goes for it. It's almost reckless attacking football, and that's what I really liked about having Fraser in the team. And I'm pretty certain that if he was on it this season, we'd be nowhere near the position we're in. I think for a club like Everton, it would be a good move for him. I think that's the kind of team that he probably would go for, to be fair. Not really sure what's happening with him. It's just for Bournemouth fans, it's very difficult to comment because it's left a bit of a sour taste. And he did an interview with local media in the week and in one of the weeks in January, and said that I haven't been playing for the team. And as a supporter, that's not what you want to be hearing. So we were all pretty gutted to hear that. And then his turgid performances since then, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth for people like Eddie Howe, who had taken on this chubby lad that came from Aberdeen. He changed his diet, he changed his mentality, he got a chef in to cook healthy meals, teach him how to cook, and bring him into the player, turn him into the player that he has been for us. But then Fraser just walks off into the sunset. Very disappointing, but whoever he plays for in the future, I'm sure that he's going to be a success.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, a very frustrating move, and then interesting that he kind of came out and made that interview, because obviously we've had players that have been questioned about kind of, do they want to play for the club as a mentality, and do we want a player like that who's happy to come out in an interview and say, you know what, I haven't been playing for the side, I don't really want to. And obviously losing him was a massive weakness in your side, kind of in this relegation fight since the restart. But kind of, do you have any other kind of major weaknesses in your side that Everton are going to be looking to exploit, how we might win this game?
If you're gonna win this game, it's just a case of lumping the ball over our fullbacks, who are potentially quite naive. It'll be Jack Stacey on the right and Diego Rico on the left, and that's the tactic that many teams have tried to deploy. Long balls over the top and catching us out. Even big teams like Liverpool have done it to us. You expect that they're going to try to play it through the Liverpool way, and then long ball over the top, and someone like Mane catches us out. And you've got players that can damage us too. Talking about Liverpool, probably a sore subject given what's happened in the last few days. But Man City have done it as well. I think they've bypassed out our midfield, which can sometimes be our strength, and they've just lumped the balls over the top. And set pieces, if you get set pieces into the box without Nathan Ake, who's injured and likely to join Man City, there's Lloyd Kelly at the back, who's I think going to be a great signing for us, but he's still young. And he's showed, for all his brilliance he's shown, there's a mistake in him as well. So if you get the ball into the box, there's always a chance that you're going to win a header, or the ball's going to drop for a second shot or something. And just it's so unfortunate to see kind of where we're at. But I've honestly got fears about this game, because I've seen how potentially good you can be when you're playing well on your day.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of moving kind of on a similar topic there, who do you kind of see as Everton's key danger men going into this game? Who you're most concerned about?
Oh, well, there's a number of them really that you go through. I mean, I've always thought that Iwobi's a good player. I don't think he had the rub of the green when he was at Arsenal, but on his day, I think he's a great player. Stalwarts like Sigurdsson as well, Calvert-Lewin, of course Richarlison as well, who is such a nippy player, and that's always the kind of player that we've kind of really wanted. But I think what's good about it, I saw quite a bit of the match against Sheffield United and also the previous one that you played against Aston Villa. Now, a lot of Everton fans were complaining about that Villa performance, but I thought you dominated for the first 15, 20 minutes. And it was rather like our previous game against Southampton, where for the first 20, we were excellent. We were almost camped in their half, good football. It was kind of end-to-end in some ways, but defensively you were sound. So whenever Villa tried to break, you broke up the attack, and then you did the turnover, and you got the ball into the right areas, but you just couldn't quite get the shot on goal. And it mirrored us a little bit in that, for all the possession that you had, you didn't get the shots on goal. Now, playing against a team like us, I think will favour you better than playing against Aston Villa for sure. Oh, God, it's going to be an interesting match. But, yeah, players like Richarlison, he'll probably score against us. He probably will. Oh, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, and then obviously similarly, who should Everton be mindful of? Who are some of your players that could cause us serious problems on Sunday? Especially because you may have watched a couple of our games in the last few weeks. You might be able to see the weaknesses kind of in our squad and the players you might have to kind of exploit that.
There are a few. It's very difficult to say when you're in such low spirits like most Bournemouth fans are at the moment. Now, we could reel out the usual names like Josh King, Callum Wilson, but I'm going to say Junior Stanislas. When he cuts in from the left-hand side, I think he's really effective, and he's been our player of the season since Project Restart. Elsewhere, there's the fullbacks, I think, are decent as well for Bournemouth. Now, that's, you're kind of clutching at straws when you're saying some of your most threatening players are your fullbacks, but Diego Rico's got a wicked left-footed cross. Jack Stacey on the right bombs forward like Simon Francis used to do for us, so he's a decent player. Lewis Cook, the creativity in the middle of the park, I think he's excellent. Dan Gosling might be in there, that bustling meddler that can break up play, maybe not amazingly creative when he's on the ball. And Dom Solanke, ex-Red signing, of course, showed us what he can do against Leicester and hasn't really had the chance to shine since then. So I certainly hope he gets the minutes, because Callum Wilson, for all the chances that he's had recently, hasn't scored many of them. I think he's another that needs a break, and to be honest, probably will go along with Josh King and Nathan Ake at the end of the season.
Yeah, and just before the end here, are there any kind of injuries or suspensions for Bournemouth that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of players that are out. Adam Smith, our right back, Nathan Ake. I mean, most of the issues that we're having are defensively. Other than that, we're in relatively good shape. I mean, David Brooks hasn't been great since Project Restart. I know he had an excellent season last time, but I think there was a lot of pressure on him, a lot of expectation, and I know a number of you would probably be expecting me to name him in the ones to watch in the question before, but he's been poor really, and it's just a lack of fitness, and the team just hasn't played well as a whole. And when the team plays well as a whole, he does, and he's usually at the centre of things. But unfortunately, not to be this time. So I think that. He kind of pulled up in the last game, and he only got 45 minutes. So whether he'll feature in this one, I don't know. But the main miss for us is Ake. Off to Man City with the best wishes that Bournemouth fans could give. His last touch against Leicester prevented them from going 2-0 up and could keep us in the Premier League. Probably won't, as we'll probably get relegated anyway. However, he is a big miss for us at the back, and he will he will fit in just really well at a top 6 club.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, the question we always like to end on, we like to do a non-football related one, but obviously the question we're going to ask you here is pineapple on pizza. Is that a yes or no for you?
Never in a million years. No, fruit does not go on pizza. And you know what? I think it's that sweetness that I really find disgusting on what is supposed to be a sort of savoury meal. I know that tomato is technically a fruit, whatever, but yeah, for me, no chance.
Well, there you have it. Thank you very much for joining me. That gave us a great insight into how Bournemouth might play and how we might win the game on Sunday.
No worries. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can chat again next season in the Premier League. But if not, all the best for the future. Cheers.